So you guys want to jump into this herd immunity fest?
Yeah.
Yes, I can't wait, actually.
Yeah. All right. Who has thoughts? Who wants to lead off?
Well, let's give the rundown of like what it is.
Man.
Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
All right, I'll do it. So, Herd Immunity Fest. It's supposed to take place next month in Wisconsin. It's going to feature Static X, who's from Wisconsin, right?
Hmm.
Um, Nonpoint, Dope, um, Flaw, who was kind of a big name in the new metal scene back in the day, and then there's a reunion by the band Boba Flex, who
Oh wow, yeah.
I've seen by name. I've never heard them, but and they named it the Herd Immunity Fest. It's going to be in an outdoor field, I guess, and
Yeah.
it's only going to be at like 30% capacity. But the reason why this got a headline is the name, obviously, but then also it's like the only live show that's supposedly happening. So with that, what's your take? What's your guys' take?
I mean, I read what the promoter had mentioned when he was asked about the festival. Like, wow, you're doing this? This is crazy. And his quote, and I don't have it quote for quote, but it was something in the realm of, live music touches people in a different way. This is something that we put together because we feel like we need human connection and we need to have live music. We need to get back to what we had before this whole thing went down. And I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, man, I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from. But given the name of the festival, let alone the time frame, it seems a little, I don't know, seems a little early, I'd say.
So two things come to mind for me. One, we all are fans of the band Nonpoint, and when they heard the name, they said, "Peace, we're not going to do
Yeah.
this." So we were all like, "Thank God, those guys are cool." So, and the other thing, you know how throughout this entire COVID process, you heard this. If you told 17-year-old me this was going to happen and then this was going to happen, you'd be like, "No way."
Yeah.
This is the one of the times that I was like, yeah, if you told 17-year-old me that all these new metal bands were going to get together during a pandemic in a field and call their concert the Herd Immunity Fest, I might believe that. I actually might believe that.
Oh man, yeah. I think we're on the same page with that. Like my first reaction was like, all right, how are these bands still a band? And I think for a lot of them, it's kind of probably their financial lifeline, and you can't hate anyone for that. Obviously, shocked that it would potentially even happen. But the other
Yeah.
thing too is like, we're all nerds and geeks here. I'm thinking the economics of it. If you have an outdoor fest and it's operating at, I think I read 25% capacity. Like it's a huge, huge
20%
thing.
actually.
20%.
Yeah. Hmm.
I don't think there's money to be made. So now you're doing it for the love of the game, but then you're putting people at risk.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and
So
I don't know
that's where it gets.
yeah, I don't know the restrictions in Wisconsin. Like, is this street legal? I don't know. Do you guys know?
Well, they had lifted a bunch of restrictions in Wisconsin. I think that's the reason that was where the festival was supposed to take place. So it's yeah, no, you can't knock the trying to make some money, and if it's that's their lifeline, and there's so many bands that put albums out right around now 20 years ago that are trying to capitalize on that 20-year anniversary for maybe their biggest album, and they can't do anything because of what's going on in the world with COVID. So I get the idea. I think the idea had a good heart, but it doesn't. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No, and to your point, Tuan, it's exactly where my head went. Is the cost of the tickets a 3-day festival? So I think it was like $110, something like that,
Yep.
which is pretty cheap. Let alone it's a 3-day festival. So if I don't know if that includes lodging. I mean camping or something. So that's a whole nother conversation in terms of COVID. Let alone the lineup and the lineup. These are bands. Some of them I've seen mostly in clubs. So the fact they're kind of headlining a festival is kind of interesting. So yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I was reading it. It's like, at 20% capacity, this might be like the epitome of like a break even analysis, and that's it, and maybe even a loss. But I mean, I think like you're saying that maybe they just want to get out there and just play, but and maybe recoup some revenue via merch. I don't really know. It doesn't really make sense. That's the first thing I thought of too. Is kind of gotten the business mindset, and it's like, you might have a break even analysis on this. That's about it. I don't think anyone's going to profit off this. And then liability wise, you might be looking at some long term aftermath. So it's pretty wild for sure.
And the band's got to get there. I mean, I don't know where some of these bands are from, but I mean, if they're close enough to drive, you can do that with low risk. But if you have to fly, I mean, it's just, and I don't know. Did you guys read a lot of the comments on social media about this? It was super.
A little bit.
It was super, obviously super divided. It was the new metal head crowd that was defending it to the nth degree. That I'm going. It's my life. Like, if something happens, I'll go down swinging. And then there's like, the new metal haters. Like, what the hell is this? Like,
and I think we all kind of straddle that line. Yeah. Like we like new metal, and obviously, I mean, we've talked about a ton of bands from that era, even just tonight. But if it's gonna be a break-even situation, the last thing you said, Nate, the liability of it makes zero sense to me. Just why even try? You're putting yourself and people at risk to catch this, fairly deadly virus for some people. So it's not a great idea, I don't think.
Yeah, if Live Nation is announcing rescheduled dates for 2021, I mean, as much as we talk in depth about Live Nation Ticketmaster, I feel like they probably have the most insight out of anyone in terms of what's going on behind the scenes and when things will get closer to normal, whether it be via vaccine or parameters about setting up a concert to get away from any kind of lawsuit or oversight. So therefore, I hate to say it, but I would say most likely it looks like it would be smart to follow Live Nation's lead and not be proactive and do a kind of off the cuff festival and just see what happens to break even. You know what I mean? I understand where it's coming from. And Tony made a good point that it's coming from an honest place. It's from the heart. Like, we all want to see live music. I totally get it. We had talked about this on another episode. If some of my favorite bands that I have tickets for were to play this month, next month, I wouldn't go. It's that easy, and I'm definitely traveling for work and super cautious about everything I do. And I think it's a mind state thing too. The most interesting thing about this is the fact that cases of COVID are actually going up in real time. Yep. So the announcement of the festival is extremely ironic. But I think a week and a half ago, that was a different climate altogether. Everyone was like kind of getting over it. The country's opening back up. We're moving to phase 2, in some places phase 3. So maybe they kind of said, okay, cool, we can announce this festival. I think we're in a good place to make this happen and people should be on board. But it's just not the case.
Yep.
That's a great point, Nate, with Live Nation, who's the most profit money first company in the game. If they're calling the game and saying, hey, we'll revisit this next year, that tells you something. This shit's real. Yeah. So when herd immunity comes, I can't even say it with a straight face. When herd immunity comes around, I mean, it's just, actually, if this is your first time hearing about it, log online, go on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, find the flyer and try not to laugh. It is straight out of like 2000.
Check our Instagram. It's on there.
It's on our Instagram. Yeah. It's straight out of like MS Paint meets clip art. It's so on brand. It's funny. Just go check it out. Yeah.
You're right about Ticketmaster, Live Nation. If they're scaling everything back, then they know something's up, and let's maybe not do this. The other thing that was funny to me, and just when I first read about this, I'm scrolling through Twitter, checking for information, looking for stuff, reading articles, whatever. And it's like, oh, Deftones postponed. Oh, this band postpones. This band postpones. Hey, come to Wisconsin in July for the Herd Immunity Fest. I'm like, is this? And I said it to you guys, and I said, is this a joke? I thought it was like The Onion or something. I'm like, I don't even know if I should believe this, because it looked like, amongst all the other things I'm reading, why is this one the complete opposite? Somebody's trolling me here. I felt trolled.
It was very Hard Times or Onion.
Yeah.
Like if the Hard Times posted that, I would have believed it. That it was a joke.
Yeah.
I would have thought it was a joke.
Yeah, that's crazy. So my guess is between now and even maybe next week, we see that not happen at all. Everybody just pulls out, and it becomes a bad idea, and it just doesn't happen.
Well, interestingly enough, bands are being added. So
no way.
It's the contrary. Yeah, it's actually the contrary. But that could get shut down
America,
by
the dumpster fire.
Hey, can we take guesses on who's added?
Yeah.
40 Below Summer.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
No, it's a good funny because it's a good call because there are some names that just like come to mind and you think of like
Stuck
that would
Mojo.
like yeah.
Stuff that, yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Man.
it's definitely something that stay tuned because more stories will come out about this, whether they're good or bad.
Totally. The fact that it's in the United States, I'm trying to think like if there's something like this would fly in another country that's maybe a little bit more lax. The United States is notorious for civil lawsuits. So the
Yep.
fact that they would go through with this is like in the most prone country for liability and lawsuits and class action lawsuits. There's no other place on the planet that's, just sitting on the trigger to file a lawsuit. So yeah, man, I hope things are okay, but I would advise at least my friends to probably hold out on this one for sure. But
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree.
One last comment is like no matter how much they like the promoter or the band say, hey, it's a huge field, we can social distance. You still have merch lines, you still have porta potties. It's a mess.
Yep.
mm-hmm.
It's a mess.
You could have people trying to clean things. They're never going to be able to keep up with that in real time, even at 20% or 25% capacity, because it's just they're communal spaces and they're hard to keep to the level that we need to keep them clean wise. That's why a lot of things are having trouble reopening, because that is something that is hard to keep up with. And that maybe you're not staffed well enough, and now you're not bringing in enough people to pay those people to do it. So yeah, it's tough.
Both your points just brought me back to the whole infrastructure thing because I go to a lot of festivals and I usually go to the first one, and a lot of them are presented by AEG or Live Nation or some kind of collaboration to put it on, so they're never like underfunded. But they're always a shit show. The first year of any festival is always a shit show, and they always lose money. I would assume. I get some insight sometimes that it's for sure losing money, but yeah, like directing traffic after the show and carpooling and stuff like that. It's just an absolute mess for like a festival that's got some heavy hitter headliners and got all the permits and everything. So this I don't know, man.